It's isn't it to me? I mean, to me, it's almost like poetic justice in so many ways. That last year, it's Russell Wilson, the new guy, against Tom Brady, at the time the 37-year-old guy, and now this year, it's Cam Newton, the new guy, against Peyton Manning, the 39-year-old guy. The only difference is nobody thought Brady was retiring after last year, and I think most people think Manning's going to retire after this year. But
Peter, what do you think?
Russell Wilson,
What do
Cam
you
Newton,
think, Peter?
they're the future.
Peter, what do you think? You think this is it for Peyton?
I think this is it. Yeah, I really do.
Regardless, win or lose.
I think this is it regardless. I think that football, in preparing for football and getting healthy enough to play football, has really become this. I mean, Peyton Manning's body, to me, is just broken down too much. He told me in the summer that he doesn't have feeling in the fingertips on his throwing hand. Now, this is just me, maybe, but that would seem to be an important element to you if you're a quarterback, having feeling in your fingertips. And he's had his foot injury this year. He still has never totally, and he may never totally get all the feeling back in both arms because of the surgery, the 4 surgeries he had on his neck in 2010 and 2011. So I just think, could he Scotch tape it together and go be somebody's guru part-time quarterback and play another year and make another $15 million? Of course he could. Why do you want to do that? And look, if he wants to do that, all the power to him. I never, ever, ever like to tell guys when to retire, but I just don't think that he thinks it's worth it anymore.
Yeah, we're with you. Peter King with us, of course. Peter, great website, the mmqb.com. But he's with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio.
Now, the other side of this equation with the Carolina Panthers is also a fantastic story. It'd be easy to just talk about Cam Newton and everything that he's done, but I'm more interested, because I think you have a better insight than most, on how this team came together. Like, I know Dave Gettleman. He was here with the New York Giants for a long time. He goes down there to Carolina. A lot of people think he's going to fire Ron Rivera. He tells Ron Rivera, look, you're not going to get fired. Just figure this out. How this team came about is a great story in of itself.
The great thing, Tiki, about what has happened is that we see teams giving coaches 1 year, 2 years, and then the coach getting whacked and they move on to the next one. I applaud Dave Gettleman for having the patience that, especially in the middle of last season, when Carolina was 3-8-1, and Ron, look, Jericho Cotchery told me this last week, that they lost an ugly game to Minnesota, had 2 punts blocked for touchdowns, and they lose this really, really ugly game. And after that game, Ron Rivera walked in the next day in Charlotte on Monday, and Cotchery said, it's just like, guys, we know what we do is going to work. We're not changing a darn thing. And so, I assume Bruce DeHaven, the special teams coach, changed some stuff on the punt cover team, but I just think that there is a patience factor by both Gettleman and by Rivera that has paid off. They're 22-2 since that day.
Peter, how much do you think the market in which they operate allowed them to show that
Great
patience?
Point. That is a fantastic point. You don't have the tabloids blaring at you every day. You don't have the fans out there booing every day. Carolina has never been the kind of atmosphere that is particularly toxic or unforgiving to a losing team. And I think, Brandon, that is a truly fascinating point. I would love to know the study of the markets of people who get fired. Now, the Giants are a little bit different because the Mara family always has been exceedingly patient and always giving guys longer time. But I think what happens, especially with Jerry Richardson, who is an old guard, old line, don't tell me what to do guy, I think he is going to err on the side of patience and not changing. He's like the Rooneys in Pittsburgh to a lesser degree. But I think that's a point that more people should ponder, and obviously it's paid off in a big way with Rivera.
There you go. So as the patience in Carolina is rewarded and the dust settles on Black Monday, those organizations that weren't as patient, what really surprised you? We've had a couple of weeks now, almost a full month to really digest the postseason activity in terms of coaches and GMs and all the transactions. What really jumps out to you, Peter, good or bad?
What jumps out at me mostly is the fact that the NFL needs to do something to stem the tide of all of the coaching openings being filled by the time the NFL gets to the Final Four. It happens almost every year where no team is willing to wait for one of the coaches on one of the best teams in football.
Mm-hmm.
It really, to me, it's particularly bothersome when guys like Mike Shula, Sean McDermott, Josh McDaniels, Matt Patricia barely get a sniff. And I'm leaving other guys out, and I don't mean to, but they barely get a sniff because their teams are still playing. I don't think there's an easy solution to this, but I think the NFL has to do something to prevent all of the coaching openings from being filled by the middle of January. And one way they could do it is to just have a 24-hour period right after the regular season in which every coach in the league, everyone, even the ones who have playoff games the following week, are allowed to make contact with with other teams. And I know everybody will say, hey, it's a distraction. I'm not talking about full-fledged 5.5-hour interviews. I'm talking about contact to be able to spend a half hour on the telephone, to be able to speak, to be able to say, we might be interested in you. Let's see if there might be a match here, and let's see if we might wait. There's no great solution to it, but I think it's an injustice that has to be addressed.
Peter King with us here on CBS Sports Radio, Tiki and Tierney Show.
Peter, obviously the Hall of Fame is very interesting this year because of some of the names. And we talked to Clark Judge, and he said T.O. is by no means a shoo-in. And BT and I looked at each other and like, oh, he's a first ballot guy. How is this going to play out for T.O.?
Oh, I mean, look, I've said it. I think he's absolutely a Hall of Fame football player. Despite some of the scars and the pockmarks on his resume, and I don't even mean the fact that he was a really disruptive influence on a lot of teams. I mean the drop passes and that. But I the reason why I always think it's a fatal thing to say that some guy, and look, we're not talking about Brett Favre. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but one of the things that is a problem year after year after year is the fact that on that list of 15 modern era finalists, we can only put in 5. So although I might think that he is one of the 5, or one of the 5 best, that doesn't mean that 46 other guys are going to think he's one of the 5 best. And the other thing about this is Marvin Harrison, who I think is absolutely unequivocally a Hall of Fame football player, is waiting in the wings too, and he's been waiting now for 3 years. You got Kevin Green, third leading sacker of all time, guy who led the league in sacks at age 34, had 98 sacks in his 30s, was a really, really good player for a long time. He's been waiting for a long time. So, I mean, there's a lot of really good guys in there, and we can only put in 5.